Kendra Burton. In this tape, we'll be doing one complete oil painting step by step from start to finish. Remember, one of the best ways to learn by video is to watch the tape entirely through first, taking notes as needed, and then go through a second time as you do your painting, stopping to review as often as you like. Also, if you adjust the color on your TV set to create natural flesh tones, you should be able to get an accurate color reproduction to help in mixing your paint colors. Let's look at the painting we're doing today. This is the sunset seascape. The glow of the sun creates beautiful colors in the sky, with the warm yellow, peach, and pink extending into the deep lavender. The lighter rocks create distance. The folding, splashing feature wave has an area where you can see the glow of the sun shining through the water. This is called the translucent. This is a combination of elements that come together to create our beautiful sunset seascape. Now, the first thing we need to do before we begin our painting is to make sure you have the supplies you need. And once you have the necessary supplies, you can now prepare your canvas layout. I pre-sketched the layout here with a light wash of thinner with a touch of ultramarine blue. You may simply use a pencil to sketch it on at home if you'd like. Now, as we do this layout, one of the first things that we want to choose is where our horizon line is going to go. And so if you'll come about a third of the way down and draw your horizon line, try to keep this really nice and straight, very horizontal. That's the first thing that you do. Then the next thing maybe is to select where your feature wave is going to come. It's actually almost in the center area of the whole canvas. Remember, as you do the top guideline of this rolling feature wave, try to keep it a little bit slanted. You don't want it too straight horizontal, and you really don't want it too slanted. So just slightly slanted on that. Then outline the top and the bottom of this splashing foam, and do a couple of rock outlines. And then the last thing you need to do on the layout is just give a division of this foreground water where it separates the water from the wet sand in here. Okay, after you've completed your canvas layout, you can now prepare your palette colors. If you'll come to the palette with me, I first of all start with titanium white. Now, you'll want to use a whole bunch of this, and as you can see, I've pre-mixed a few of these colors, so I've used up some of this, but I had a pile that was about this big. You want to make sure you have quite a bit of that, and if it's too thick when you put it on your canvas, or excuse me, on your palette, you may want to mix a little bit of linseed into it to make it a little bit smoother. Then the next palette color that we have is called cadmium yellow medium, and you want to make sure you get the medium tone of this because cadmium yellow actually comes in a lighter and a deeper tone as well. So cadmium yellow medium, then cadmium orange, then we have a real deep red. This is called alizarin crimson. After that, we go on to burnt sienna. This is kind of a reddish brown color. And then the last one that we use today is ultramarine blue. Now, once you have the necessary palette colors, you can now mix some of your painting colors. In the interest of time, of course, like I mentioned, we have pre-mixed a few of these, and I'll tell you what goes into them now. The first color that I pre-mixed here is called our off-white. I'm not sure if it looks fairly yellow to you, but it is an off-white. And when you, in fact, I may put just a little bit more white in here so it lightens that up a little bit. But since the colors are quite warm, you want it to be kind of a yellowish off-white. Now, you do need to be careful as you put the yellow into this white, because it actually will color it up very, very fast when you're using yellow into the white. But now the next color, okay, so there are only two colors that go into the first one, just white with a little touch of cad yellow. The next one is the same two colors, except you use more yellow on that. So we're using white with a little bit more cad yellow, medium, and then the next color that I've pre-mixed here is called our peach. And in this one, it's really a simple combination. Again, it's white with some cadmium orange to create the peach, and then the last color that I pre-mixed is a real pretty pink kind of a color, and we've used alizarin crimson with our white. You want to start with white though, because that has mostly white, and then just use a little bit of your yellow so it's not quite so pure and vivid on that pink. It'll warm it up a little bit more. Now I'm going to mix up one more color before we start to paint our sky. And this color is kind of a deep lavender, and it has a few more colors, so I thought it'd be good to show you how to mix this one on camera. What we do is take a little bit of alizarin, all these three colors in the corner, alizarin, burnt sienna, and ultramarine blue, and then some of this white. Now I have put a little bit of linseed in my white so that it's more creamy. And we're trying to come up with a color that's kind of a deeper lavender. Now later on we'll come up with even a darker color using those very same combinations, those three colors plus white, when we do our water. But this one is a lavender, maybe just a little bit more burnt sienna. It's kind of a gray too. I say a deep lavender. It actually, you don't want to get it too vivid or bright. See, that's it may look kind of gray to you, but it is a lavender gray kind of a color. Okay, now once you have these 5 colors mixed, then we're going to take our sable flat number 10, and this is a nice soft brush. You can see this. It's soft-haired and it's square on the top. Sable flat number 10, and we're going to dip into, this is our off-white color, and we're going to put in our sun. And as you come up to the canvas with me, we'll choose an area where our sun will go. Now this is probably the easiest way for you to decide. Here again, see, we've worked in thirds here with our horizon. We also will divide this into thirds, and our sun is coming just about a third of the way over here as well. You might be able to just maybe put it on the right above this area of our land. Now, here's another important thing to keep in mind. I have not drawn in the sun in our canvas layout, and this is really important because even if you have a tiny, even a light pencil, it's going to pick up too much pencil lead. So sketch in all of the rest of it, but do just leave it blank for where your sun goes, and all you have to do is simply paint that in a little later. Now what makes it nice to get a nice rounded sun is that we do have this real soft brush, and it actually has a real nice chisel edge. I know sometimes people say, boy, I'm trying to get that sun, and it keeps getting, we end up with a kind of a square sun, and then they make it bigger and bigger and bigger. But really, you don't have to worry too much about that either if you end up having a little bit bigger sun than I do, or if it's not exactly round, I wouldn't worry about it too much at this point because you can actually come back in with other colors around that. Okay, now while I'm using this same, gee, I hope you can see that. I know that's pretty close to the canvas color. Now I'm going to use the same brush, wipe it out a little bit, and I'm going to dip into this color that's called our peach. I'm going to try to get a fairly nice rounded edge. This is kind of to set off our sun here a little bit. This is the peach. I'm using the sable flat number 10. If you find when you're doing your sun that the sable flat 10 is a little too big, you can always switch to a smaller sable flat if you need to. This is a little bit more detailed. We need to kind of come in here and try to create a rounded look. And when we get into the other colors of the sky, then I'm going to switch to a lot bigger brush. But at this point, we're still using this fairly small one. Cutting our sun in there. Okay, hopefully that looks pretty round. I'll come out just a little bit further so that as we go to our bigger brush, we're not going to have to skim over that sun. Now we're going to change brushes and colors, and we're going to go into the color that we call our yellow. Now I've got this quite a bit larger brush. This is a bristle one, so it's going to be stiffer. I'm dipping into a little bit medium. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to scoot that over for now so you can see as I dip into there. To keep it a little creamier. Sometimes it starts stiffening up on you, so you want to keep it nice and creamy. This is the Bristle Bright number 12, and we're going to go right above the sun with kind of almost a cup-shaped glow in here. So as we come up here, this brush sets it in really fast. Bring it down probably halfway between the sun and the top of the canvas, extending not quite to the corner on the left. Now, realistically, your glow would be exactly symmetrical from the sun. We've kind of used a little bit of artistic license today so that we can extend it a little bit further on the right-hand side simply because our sun is not exactly in the middle of the canvas. And you're going to start seeing how these warm colors just make that sky glow. Now we'll go into the next color, which is the peach. I'm still using this Bristle Bright, the number 12, so it's a pretty good sized brush, maybe about an inch wide. Now I'm going to come right next to the yellow. I'm not blending in with the yellow quite yet. I'm just going to lay this in first. And this color you do take right to the corner on the left. And not quite on the right. We'll just leave some area for some pink there. Now I'm just going to go straight into the canvas and kind of do a circular blend kind of a thing. As your brush is perpendicular into the canvas, which means just straight in like this, you'll be able to get a pretty good blend in here. Okay, this should be kind of a peachy color. It may look a little bit oranger on your screen, but you do want to create kind of a peach. I know sometimes colors do end up a little bit more vivid on your camera. I like to have it a paler peach. The color is really pretty accurate here, but you may judge for yourself. Some people kind of like it to be a little bit more bright oranges. I do like the lighter peach. Maybe as you're painting, if you want to create a lighter peach color, for you to paint from your television, you could adjust the tint to lighten it up a little bit. Okay, now the next color I'm dipping into is called our pink. Maybe just a little bit of medium as we go so it lays on there a little easier. Make sure you don't get too much medium as well, okay? Because if you do, sometimes a lot of your canvas will start, it just lays on too thin of a layer here. Okay, now this is our pink. Now I may have to lighten this up just a little bit. It looks kind of vivid to me. And here we're going right to the corner, in fact overlapping just a little bit more. We'll take this one right down to the horizon of our water. And again over into the corner on the left, about halfway down between the corner and the mountain. Really scrub this in. First you kind of lay it on, and then we'll do the kind of our circular blending that we had before. Now that, I may add just a little touch of white as we do this, or off-white, so that this lightens up just a little bit. There, I think that's a little bit prettier color. Okay, now I'm going to do the scrub blend in here. Just kind of circular, and then you can go back and forth like so. Okay, now you should be able to just have a real nice flow between colors on that sky. Then the last color we're going to go into on our sky before we go on is one we just mixed, called our lavender gray. See, I'm not cleaning my brush in between these colors either. I'm still using that same brush. It's because these colors kind of go from light to dark, and there's really not a big necessity to clean between those colors. Okay, and this little bit over here. Okay, and here again, we're kind of blending in here. So you go right up to the color that you used before, then you do this circular kind of a blend, brush perpendicular, straight in at least to the canvas, and then kind of blend across like so. And then I'm going to go and get another brush that's called our blender brush, which is a real soft hair brush made out of rabbit hair, and it's very, very soft, and it gives you the most wonderful results on blending. Okay, I have my rabbit hair blender. I'm going to start with the lighter colors and just simply soften all of these up. Now, like I say, it may seem a little bit more vivid than the actual finished product as you're viewing it through your television. If you like a color that's a little bit lighter, you can adjust it to fit what you think is a really good color as you're painting. Okay, we'll just do this real soft blend. I kind of do circular and then straight. Then we'll go on to our background water. Okay, that should do our sky. Now for our background water, we're going to use a different brush. If you can see this on your palette, and this one is called the Bristle Filbert. It's flat and it's curved on the end. It's flat, but it has a curved top. Now we're going to go into the darker lavender gray here for our water, maybe a little bit of medium. For our medium, you may want to simply just mix up a little linseed, like half and half, linseed and thinner. Okay, I'm going to cut in a couple of swelling waves back in here. Now, I'm not having them be exactly horizontal. They slant slightly, kind of in the same direction that the larger wave does. This is the darker sky color. In fact, I'm going to mix up one more darker color that I think may help give us a better contrast. And I'm going to simply come back to the palette and use the same color combination for the water. Here we have alizarin, burnt sienna, and ultramarine blue with some white. Now, since you want this to be darker than your other lavender gray, you don't add as much white. And that looks pretty brown to me, so we're going to add a little bit more of this blue and white in a minute. May need a little bit more alizarin too. This alizarin is a really, really strong color. If you put just a little touch on, sometimes it really goes a long, long way. Okay, now I'm going to take that color and go back up to my canvas and go maybe deepen those just a little bit. Not too much. Kind of let those set out. Now we're going to do kind of little scallop shapes. I wonder if you can come in a little closer and see how this goes on the canvas. You kind of do small little scallops like so. They're just little dips, and I'm sure sometimes even on little cartoons you see things that go like so, you know, when they do the water. Well, I'm going kind of in the direction that the water would come up and swell. Kind of giving a little bit of direction. And then way back in the background, we're going to do some really, really straight, almost horizontal. They can slant just slightly, but pretty straight. Okay, a little bit of medium in with my darker color. This is the darker lavender gray. Quite horizontal strokes, kind of dipping just a little bit, but still fairly horizontal. It's amazing how this starts to become water in here. It really, you'll see how as we add a few more lighter colors, this starts changing from simply a canvas with some colors to an actual almost three-dimensional looking type of a thing. Okay, a few more back in here. Now I'm going to work almost backwards from the sky. I'm going to wipe out my brush and dip into, I'm going to skip that other color, but I'll put in a few pinks, skipping the lavender. Now you'll keep the pinks generally kind of out toward the side. Actually, this is kind of a fill-in-the-blanks kind of process. You do a few little waves here and there, and then sometimes I have students say, well, now, do I put it on the top or on the bottom, or where do I put this color, or that type of a question. But on this one, it's really not real crucial. If you've got those swells in there at first, then you just come in here and just kind of at random, wherever there's a little space, fill it in, generally keeping your darker colors toward the outside, working in light right under the sun. Okay, now a little bit of peach. Kind of filling in the blanks still. Working our way over. You can use peach still over on the side a little bit. You may want to darken up the top where it divides. I'm going to take a little bit of a darker color so that we can make sure we get a good divide between sky and background water in here. Try to keep it nice and horizontal. Okay, now on to yellow. And this, like I say, the lighter colors will keep more in the center of the picture. And we'll just kind of top it off with a little bit of white in there. And this does have a specific place to go. It would be right at the top of these darker swell areas. And then right below the sun. Okay, then we'll get ready to move on to one of the funnest parts, I think, of seascapes. In fact, I just love to paint seascapes. And this is one of the most favorite parts of people who are learning, too. And that is the translucent. This is where you can almost see the sun glowing through the water. We're going to start by using, well, I'll just use that same brush. I'll clean it out a little bit so we can get a nice light color. Going to the off-white. Here we're still using that Filbert bristle number 4, off-white, and then we want to create kind of an almond shape right in here. This may be a little bit difficult to see, but it's shaped like this. It's like a slanted almond shape. The next color we're going into is our yellow. Keep in mind, a lot of working with seascapes is going from lights to darks or darks back to lights, and that's what will give you a very effective seascape. Now this will outline our almond shape a little bit more. There's our yellow. People really love this translucent area because it just, you can almost just feel the warmth and the glow of the sun shining through that water. There's our yellow, then on into our peach. And you can kind of almost blend this a little bit as you're going through, even with this filbert. If it feels too orange, you can add just a touch of white with it. This is off-white I'm adding just to make that look a little bit more peach to you. That look more peach. There we go. Now we'll work into the pink. And the pink we take almost to the corner and right about in here. It kind of thins out as we get a little lower. That may, if it feels a little too dark, you can add just a little bit of your white or off-white to lighten it up just a little bit. Now the last color we have, we're going to take it further on over to the left. We're going to connect it with the corner on the right, and that is our darker watercolor. Now this may also look a little bit dark to you. If you want to mix a little bit of white with that color as well. And we're going to extend this clear over, well, beyond the rocks. And right under here. This is right under the splashing foam. It's always going to be the darkest right under the splashing foam, so I'm going back to my deepest, darkest. And really keep this nice and jagged. I know some people, as they're painting, they kind of come along and maybe they're trying to make it too smooth, or else they get little scallops as they're doing it in here. You want to make this just really jagged and uneven, because you're going to shake your hand as you go right across there. Really nice, uneven area at the bottom. The same when you paint your foam. Just keep it nice and uneven, splashy, really random water splashing all over. Okay, so we're basically right underneath there, keeping in mind that we're really splashing toward the top, or the bottom edge of that splashing foam, connecting and extending clear out the side. Now we do need to blend a little bit between those two colors, our pink and our lavender. It's actually the darker lavender. We have two tones of our lavender that we're working with. And see, you can change this a little bit too. If you don't want it quite so lavender, you can make it just a little bit more blue or something to add variety. Okay, now I'm going to go back to a soft blender and blend starting at the lighter color. You need to make sure your blender is nice and clean. We blended from the sky, but as you clean this is important to know. You don't want to dip it into your thinner to clean it until you're totally done with your painting. So now we're just really, really softly going to start working this in. See how that just makes that glow? Now I'm going to put just a little bit more with my sable flat right up in this lighter area. The more light you have, the more sun that you have glowing through that translucent. There we go. Oh, isn't that neat? This really brings that sun through there. Ooh, it does. It looks really good. Okay, now I'm going to do kind of the reverse process here, starting with the lighter working into the dark going up. But I'm not going to start with the very, very lightest. I'll start with our yellow, then peach, and on up into the colors. Okay, we're taking the filbert bristle again. Boy, I use this brush a lot. This is the filbert bristle number 4. If you can see that, that again is that flat one that's really stiff and rounded at the tip. Okay, a little bit of yellow, and you can go quickly on this. Just block that in. You don't have to have too much of it. Then dip it over into your peach. That'll be the next color across. Then our pink. And on into the darker lavender. Right, take that right up to the top of the folding wave. Now do just a little bit of a blend while you've got your filbert here, and then we'll do a soft brush blend. As you do these blends, you can start to see that become more of like a cylinder as that wave is folding over in there. Okay, blend into the pinks now. And as we progress, this is just so exciting. When I paint, I love Seascapes. This is probably my most favorite thing to paint because it takes something that's really flat and turns it into a real three-dimensional looking kind of thing. Now I'm switching brushes to a fan. If you look at the palette, this is what my fan looks like. It's the bristle filbert, which is kind of stiff, and I'm not putting anything on it right now. I'm just going to pull these colors across, giving me direction for water. It's kind of hard to see, I know, on your screen, but I'm pulling this across to give us direction. It's just barely picking up that dark. And then I'm going to go over that with some white. Now, on the off-white, I'm going to dip into a little bit of medium because you do want this off-white to be kind of thin and soupy so that as we pull it across, it'll just kind of separate and give you these wonderful water highlights on this rolling wave. Now see, that's starting to really give some shine and some motion to that wave. Doesn't this remind you of a place you may have been, Hawaii or California? I know that it's any place where you can see the sea just rolling in there and the sun glistening on that water. There's our off-white. Just pull it. You can extend it clear down into the splashing foam area. A little bit more, especially right under where the sun is. It's always important to keep it right under that sun. We are doing so well today. There we go. Now see, a little bit more light right underneath the sun. That kind of gives it more glow to that water. Okay, now after we've painted that, we're going to do the shadow foam. And to do this, oh no, I'm going to have you do the foreground water first. Then I'll have you do the shadow foam in here. We're going to use kind of the same process with our brushes. Starting with our darker colors. Well, here again, you may decide between these two lavenders depending on what your own personal taste is in here. I'm going to just kind of do Here again, little scallops. It's kind of what you did in the background water, but curved just a little bit more, maybe a little bit bigger sweeping strokes. I'm going to take a little bit of the darker color. Of course, that comes out toward the side of your painting. And then you also can put in a little lighter lavender if you'd like, for interest. Here again, it starts to become a fill in the open areas kind of process. On into the lighter colors, pink, keeping these a little bit more toward the outside. It's amazing how these just these little scallopy kind of strokes really create just the water bumping up. So splashing. Okay, now we'll go into the peach, and we'll keep the peach and the yellows, the lighter colors more toward the center. They can catch a few little sparkles over toward the side, but generally you'll keep your lighter ones to the center. Still using this bristle filbert number 4. Okay, some yellow. And then one little last color after that, we'll put in a little bit of white, off-white. There's our yellow. Then we'll put in some off-white, especially right below where the sun shines here. That really sparkles up that water and gives it a real sunny glow to it. Now we'll move on to the part we call our splashing foam. I'm going to do a darker foam and then highlight it with a lighter one. And to mix this color, we're going to take ultramarine blue and a little bit of burnt sienna and add quite a bit of white. In fact, as you're doing this, you may want to start with white so that you don't get it too dark. It's kind of a blue-gray. We want that a little bit more blue. You don't want it too vivid, but it is kind of a blue-gray. Oh, there, that's a pretty color. Okay, now we're going to take maybe just a little, we need a little bit more white. When you paint with this, boy, you use a ton of white. I don't know if you can see this tube of white, but I always get these gigantic tubes because you use just a whole bunch of white as you paint. Okay, a little dab more of blue. More white. Now we do have the off-white, so we're going to be using kind of a shadow foam blue color here and then the off-white for our foam. Going back to the filbert bristle number 4, we're going to dip into that blue that we just mixed up. Come back to the canvas. Now, one thing to keep in mind as you're doing this too is some of the darks can come up above the center line. Sometimes when people are painting this, they have almost the center line, and they do dark and they do light, and then it almost looks really, really stiff. If you want to make it look really, really splashy, come and bounce up that foam right up into the light like that. And it can come, like I say, up into the top areas just like that. Basically, you want to just keep the very, very tops the lightest color, but you can work a lot of this blue right into this. Take it right over into the rocks here on the left, maybe a little bit splashing on that rock in there. This is kind of a blue-gray. Grab a little bit more of this. Here again, bounce up. Let's just make one great big bounce right in there. We really want this foam to just splash right up against those rocks. There, now you want to be kind of careful as you get closer to your translucent, because that is kind of an important part of this painting, and so we want to be really careful as we go there so that we don't end up with too much paint right in this area. Okay, we'll just extend that very, very thin at the top here, and then just a little bit more over to the right. And I'm going to do kind of the same process below on our splashing foam, right down in here. Now see, this line that we drew in before is the bottom of it. So we're just going to make this just a little smaller area of splashing foam extending over toward the left. Just scrub it in. It can be just really random splashy. And also, another thing to keep in mind is as you're doing this really, really uneven line in here too, at the very bottom of your splashing foam, we'll extend that over kind of about right in there to that rock. Let's add just a little bit more up in here. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, now you'll want to clean out your brush because we're going to use the same brush. I'm just using a brush cleaner here. It's a little spring on the bottom. Now I'm going to get that really clean. Then I'm dipping into my off-white. This is still our bristle filbert number 4. I know people in my classes tell me I use that all the time, and I really do. This is a really good brush to have, and it's really not too expensive either. Okay, so we're just going to kind of lay that in, and you'll see this makes us just capture that sun as we put in that sunny, shiny foam. And you can work up little dots up into the higher areas as well. Now you may have some sketch lines you need to cover, and you may need to lay it on just a little heavier. You can judge that at home depending on your own painting. Sometimes our easel bumps just a little bit. And just a little bit over here. We generally don't have as much highlight toward the edges. You can kind of work in between these colors a little bit so that it looks a little bit more splashy and soft. Okay, if you want to at this point, some people like the texture, some people like to blend it. That's up to you. If you'd like to blend it, you can. I'm going to just leave it at that point with that splashing foam, and then do the foreground splashing foam starting at the left here. A bit of white. I'm going to kind of put this on first, and then I'm going to extend it into the water. It's really kind of funny to see this. It's almost like here we have water, and this is really working, and then this is really white and flat. It's kind of funny at this point, I think, to see this. But we'll help you put it together and to make a really nice looking. Okay, now I'm going to take this white and kind of extend this into the water a little bit. Okay, then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to paint our wet sand. And this is one of the funnest parts of painting too. As you can tell, I really, really do like to do seascapes. This next process is what we call ribbons of color. This is where we'll start right below the sun, and we'll take our off-white and then work our colors in from light to dark toward the outside. Here again, the very same bristle filbert number 4, off-white, right underneath the sun. Okay, now you want to kind of get it right straight under. Don't make it right in the middle of your canvas, because it does especially need to come right underneath that sun. It's kind of hard maybe to see this. I'm going to do a straight up and down area that's about an inch or so wide. Then I'm going to go on each side of it with the next color from light to dark. Here's our yellow. And after yellow, we'll go into the next color, which will be our peach. And peach. We'll extend it a little further, just like we did on the sky, artistically. do want to make sure that this reflection is right in line. I've grabbed a little bit of white maybe to extend this a little bit on this side. It is important to get that right underneath that all sun there, maybe just a touch more impact. I know sometimes when we're working at a side angle for the cameras, it's a little bit different angle than what you're seeing. Okay, now we'll go into the pink. This one's about halfway between the peach color and the edge on the left, so there's our pink. Now we'll extend this a little further down. Okay, a little bit more pink over on this side, and we'll come about there. Just really scrub this in. It doesn't have to be really, really heavy. Okay, the next color, now on this side I'm going to change this just a little bit. I'm going to take some of our lighter gray and then on into the darker one. Like I say, you kind of have to judge this. You have to judge it depending on what your color combinations look like. Just maybe a little bit of that color over in here. And then I'm going to add a little bit more over there, and then just a little bit from the very outside of our darkest. See, what we're doing basically is reflecting all the surrounding colors in this reflective sand, this wet, wet sand. There's a little bit of darker pulling in, a little bit of darker over on this left-hand side. Now you may want to clean your brush at this point. You need to be kind of careful as you clean your brush that you wipe it out really well with your paper towel, because sometimes you'll end up, and we hope this works well, sometimes you'll end up with paint still in your brush. Yeah, see, that doesn't have any paint. So when you clean it, do be careful that you clean it well and wipe it well. Okay, now I'm going to just go up and down with these little ribbons of colors. We've got light to dark, starting with the center sun path, and I'm going to go up and down blending this with the filbert bristle. On over to the edge. So you want to create a lot more smooth blend this way. Same thing here. A little bit over in here still. Okay, now I'm going to do a little bit darker color right under here, but to do this next process I need to mix up a few more colors. Now these will be the last mixes that you do, and they're going to be different combinations of exactly the same colors. Different proportions, I guess I should say, is probably a better word. Okay, the colors are, and these aren't really very tough, they're just three different things. We're going to use white, burnt sienna, and ultramarine blue. This is our sand color. Now see, that's pretty blue, so we're going to grab a little bit more burnt sienna. Burnt sienna with ultramarine and white, usually, it's amazing how many combinations you can get, because see, we use that same one for this blue foam as well. Okay, there's a nice sand color. And then we're going to do some rock colors. Now these rock colors you'll want to make just a little bit bluer. Here's, I'm going to start with the darkest color, so then we can just pull it and separate it and lighten it. So here's a very dark rock color. Still again, those very same three colors. And I like to kind of have them a little bit bluer, but you can judge this too. Sometimes people do these paintings to coordinate with things that they have in their home or with something that they're going to give to someone, and so you can just judge this as you'd like to. So there's our dark rock. Now we're going to pull this aside and lighten it. We're going to have three tones of rocks. Here's our sand, here's the darker rock, and then I'll just do a couple more tones of lighter rock. There's kind of a medium one. I've taken a little bit of that darker color, pulled it aside. Now we don't need a whole lot of this because we just don't have that many medium rocks to do. This needs a little bit more of this color, and also I want it to be a little bit more bluer. You know how things, as they go into the distance, sometimes they become a little bluer. So I'm adding a little bit more blue with this one. So I need a little bit more brown. A little bit more of that. And then the last color combination we're going to have will be our lighter one. This will go way, way out into the distance. And I'm just going to grab a little bit more of this to make sure we have enough paint. I want this kind of blue. I think I'll grab just a little bit of this foam color in here. There we go. That gets it to the color we need. Pretty close. Okay. Now I'm going to take the color that's this medium rock color, and with a soft sable flat, this is your sable flat number 10, I'm going to grab some of that and come in and make just a little bit of a reflection of this foam on the foreground into the wet sand. See, this kind of gives a reflective look in here. Don't want it too dark. You may have to blend it just a little bit. And we're also going to blend it in a minute with a softer blender. Okay, now we're going to do our sand, and I'm just going to grab this great big bristle bright and just block in this sand here at the bottom. Sometimes this easel wiggles just a little bit, so that's what you hear, I think, sometimes if you that little plank of a sound. Now we're just going to scrub this in right below that wet area. You may need to grab a little bit of your medium as you're working. Get it to go on faster and smoothly. And now I'm going to switch to a bristle filbert and just pull those overlapping into the sand. Now if you want to, you can use a softer brush because sometimes people feel like they have more control of this. Okay, I'm just going to kind of overlap this. This is where it kind of folds in. Previous waves have come in and gone back out. You just crisscross these, cut them in and out as you'd like to. This really starts to make it look like water, wet sand. Oh, makes you want to get your little toes in there. Okay, now I'm going to go on to our rocks and then we'll finish up with our highlights. So since we've mixed those other rock colors, I'm going to switch for my very distant one to the color that's called it's the distant rock color amount. Now this is a little bit stiff, so I'm going to, oops, wrong color right there. Okay, the lighter rock color. As you thin out your paint, it makes it go on more smoothly, especially for things like this where you want to have a nice edge in there. Okay, so there's our background rocky area there. Okay, then the next one, I'm going to switch brushes now because the next one, it doesn't matter quite as much how even the edge is. Next color rock, this is our medium one. This brush is the filbert bristle number 4. Now see, that's all you have to do with that color. I told you we didn't use very much, but now our darker rock color. That's a little bit stiff. Take a little bit of our medium. So we're blocking this in. pull in a little bit of a reflection right under there. And then we'll go to the right of our canvas, walk in those darker rocks. A bit of a reflection. Make your rocks kind of fun shapes, different shapes, kind of uneven. About 3 different rocks in there. Okay, these go in the foreground. Now you also can change the color of these rocks to be either lighter or darker, depending on what you like or maybe what you've seen, someplace you've been before maybe. Someplace maybe on the east or the west coast. I know this has to be a sunset maybe on the west coast. Okay, now the last little thing we're going to do is take our small liner brush. This is kind of just about like you line your eyes with if you look at the palette. It's very, very small. And we're going to do some highlights on the water and on the rocks, and then we will be done. Okay, so I'm going to dip into the color that's the darker foam color. Do a few highlights on the dark side of the rock, like so. This is kind of where the water's come in, splashed off, maybe a few little ripple lines on the bottom there. This blue foam color actually is used more toward the side. We kind of do a few of them in here. Toward the side areas of your painting, and we'll keep the lighter off-white toward the center. Here we go, a few more little ripply lines in there. Under this part, under this rock, and then also, you may want to get a little bit of reflection under there. Also, we'll do a few more little strokes on this side. This is our water falling off those rocks. Then clean your brush a little bit and into the light, the off-white. This is our last touch to really sparkle up this painting. If you want to, you can also put a few highlights. You can use this off-white, or else you can use the peach. Maybe we'll dip into our peach a little bit for the off-white on, or for the highlights on the rocks. Okay, a few little, what I like to do to highlight this is just a few little dots. It just really sparkles up. Take the dots any place in the sun area, maybe a few even over to the side. This really, really splashes this up. Oh, now that might be a little high right there. That can be splashing up from this foreground maybe. Okay, now let's do a few highlights in here. I'm going to do the highlights with peach. And then we'll be done. Okay. This is really pulling in that sun back. That might be just a little too bright up there. Cut in the shapes of your rocks in here. You can even use this peach. Clear back to your background. Where the sun is in the center, the reflection for these rocks will be on this side. These will be on the inside. Each way they'll be directed from where the sun is. More highlights in there with our peach color. Now let's take a look at that. Wow, doesn't that just make you want to kick off your shoes and dip your feet into that wet sand with the warm water, with the warm sunshine shining on your shoulders, to listen to the splash of the sparkling waves rolling in? Hopefully this tape has helped you discover an exciting and successful approach to painting beautiful seascapes. You may also like to try other Paint by Video projects in this series, including Golden Quaking Aspen, Mountain in the Pines, Country Field and Barn, and the Misty Green Forest. This is Kendra Burton. It's been enjoyable painting with you. Thanks. Bye.